It's going.
Hello, Untitled Storytelling. How are you doing today? We are going to be reading a story, and it will actually be Ben-Hur. And we're also going to be reading a chapter of the Bible. And we are only going to be doing one chapter of Ben-Hur because it is late. And
Hi, how are you? I'm Heavy D. I'm going to tell you a story.
yeah, this is Heavy D.
I want to encourage, thank you first of all for two people showing up so quickly on the Zoom, not Zoom, but hi Rebecca. Rebecca says she loves you, JJ.
Love you, Becca.
Okay, so I want to thank you so much for showing up. I know that it's late. Howsomever, we just had a nice little call with Daniel, and he's doing well, and we hope that he's getting better. And I'm going to go back to Judges now that Christmas is over. And we're going to finish Judges, and then we're going to read Ruth, and then we're going to go to the New Testament and read something different. All right, are you ready?
Yeah.
This is Judges chapter 20. And since it is late, like JJ said, we will just be reading one chapter from the Bible and probably one chapter from Ben-Hur. I want to remind you that it's okay to like my video. It's okay to put comments on my video. And it's also okay to share it with your friends. So with all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and start. This is the English Standard Version of the Bible, Judges chapter 20. Remember, 19 was kind of a horrific little chapter. Yes. Then all the people of Israel came out from Dan to Beersheba, including the land of Gilead, and the congregation assembled as one man to the Lord at Mizpah. And the chiefs of all the people of all the tribes of Israel presented themselves in the assembly of the people of God, 400,000 men on foot that drew the sword. Now the people of Benjamin heard that the people of Israel had gone up to Mizpah, and the people of Israel said, "Tell us, how did this evil happen?" And the Levite, the husband of the woman who was murdered, answered and said, "I came to Gibeah, that belongs to Benjamin, I and my concubine, to spend the night. And the leaders of Gibeah rose against me and surrounded the house against me by night. They meant to kill me, and they violated my concubine, and she is dead. So I took hold of my concubine and cut her in pieces, and sent her throughout all the country of the inheritance of Israel, for they have committed abomination and outrage in Israel. Behold, you people of Israel, all of you, give your advice and counsel here." And all the people arose as one man, saying, "None of us will go to his tent, and none of us will return to his house. But now this is what we will do to Gibeah. We will go up against it by lot, and we will take 10 men of 100 throughout all the tribes of Israel, and 100 of 1,000, and 1,000 of 10,000, to bring provisions for the people, that when they come they may repay Gibeah of Benjamin for all the outrage that they have committed in Israel." So all the men of Israel gathered against the city, united as one man. And the tribes of Israel sent men through all the tribe of Benjamin, saying, "What evil is this that has taken place among you? Now therefore give up the men, the worthless fellows in Gibeah, that we may put them to death and purge evil from Israel." But the Benjaminites would not listen to the voice of their brothers, the people of Israel. Then the people of Benjamin came together out of the cities to Gibeah to get out to battle against the people of Israel. And the people of Benjamin mustered out of their cities on that day 26,000 men who drew the sword, besides the inhabitants of Gibeah, who mustered 700 chosen men. Among all these were 700 chosen men who were left-handed. Every one could sling a stone at a hair and not miss. And the men of Israel, apart from Benjamin, mustered 400,000 men who drew the sword. All these were men of war. The people of Israel arose and went up to Bethel and inquired of God, who shall go up first for us to fight against the people of Benjamin? And the Lord said, Judah shall go up first. Then the people of Israel rose in the morning and encamped against Gibeah. And the men of Israel went out to fight against Benjamin, and the men of Israel drew up the battle line against them at Gibeah. The people of Benjamin came out to Gibeah and destroyed on that day 22,000 men of the Israelites. But the people, the men of Israel, took courage and again formed the battle line in the same place where they had formed it on the first day. And the people of Israel went up and wept before the Lord until the evening. And they inquired of the Lord, shall we again draw near to fight against our brothers, the people of Benjamin? And the Lord said, go up against them. So the people of Israel came near against the people of Benjamin the second day. And Benjamin went against them out of Gibeah the second day, and destroyed 18,000 men of the people of Israel. All these were men who drew the sword. Then all the people of Israel, the whole army, went up and came to Bethel and wept. They sat there before the Lord and fastened that day until evening, and offered burnt offerings and peace offerings before the Lord. And the people of Israel inquired of the Lord, for the ark of the covenant of God was there in those days. And Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, son of Aaron, ministered before it in those days, saying, shall we go out once more to battle against our brothers, the people of Benjamin, or shall we cease? And the Lord said, go up, for tomorrow I will give them into your hand. So Israel sent men in ambush around Gibeah, and the people of Israel went up against the people of Benjamin on the third day, and set themselves in array against Gibeah as at other times. And the people of Benjamin went out against the people, and were drawn away from the city. And as at other times they began to strike and kill some of the people in the highways, one of which goes up to Bethel, and the other to Gibeah. And in the open country about 30 men of Israel. And the people of Benjamin said, they are routed before us as at the first. But the people of Israel said, let us flee and draw them away from the city to the highways. And all the men of Israel rose up out of their place, and set themselves in array at Baal Tamar. And the men of Israel who were in ambush rushed out of their place from Marah-Geba, and there came against Gibeah 10,000 chosen men out of all Israel. And the battle was hard, but the Benjaminites did not know that disaster was close upon them. And the Lord defeated Benjamin before Israel, and the people of Israel destroyed 25,100 men of Benjamin that day. All these were men who drew the sword. So the people of Benjamin saw that they were defeated. The men of Israel gave ground to Benjamin, because they trusted the men in ambush whom they had set against Gibeah. Then the men in ambush hurried and rushed against Gibeah. The men in ambush moved out and struck all the city with the edge of the sword. Now the appointed signal between the men of Israel and the men in the main ambush was that when they made a great cloud of smoke rise up out of the city, the men of Israel should turn in battle. Now Benjamin had begun to strike and kill about 30 men of Israel. They said, surely they are defeated before us as in the first battle. But when the signal began to rise out of the city in a column of smoke, the Benjaminites looked behind them, and behold, the whole of the city went up in smoke to heaven. Then the men of Israel turned, and the men of Benjamin were dismayed. for they saw that disaster was close upon them. Therefore they turned their backs before the men of Israel in the direction of the wilderness, but the battle overtook them. And those who came out of the cities were destroying them in their midst. Surrounding the Benjaminites, they pursued them and trod them down from Nohah as far as opposite Gibeah in the east. 18,000 men of Benjamin fell, all of them men of valor, and they turned and fled toward the wilderness to the rock of Rimmon. 5,000 men of them were cut down in the highways, and they were pursued hard to get them, and 2,000 men of them were struck down. So all who fell that day of Benjamin were 25,000 men who drew the sword, all of them men of valor. But 600 men turned and fled toward the wilderness to the rock of Rimmon, and remained at the rock of Rimmon 4 months. And the men of Israel turned back against the people of Benjamin, and struck them with the edge of the sword, the city, men and beasts, and all that they found. And all the towns that they found they set on fire. The end of Judges chapter 20. We have one more chapter in Judges. Can't get much worse than this. We're basically having an all-out civil war. After that, they cut that woman to pieces. And now we're going to have... Are we doing a synopsis?
Yes.
Okay, we just had one chapter yesterday. Or no, 2 chapters yesterday and 1 chapter the day before. So here's Kimberly. She's going to give us a synopsis. Here she is. Recap of the last chapter. Merry Christmas, everyone. Didn't realize Braveheart was taken from Judges. Even though I think Mom hasn't ever actually seen Braveheart. All right.
So what happened in the last chapter?
First of all, notice Kimberly's fabulous hair.
Yeah, that's why I did not do the synopsis yesterday. Mom was putting in hair curlers. And JJ says that I looked like Medusa. He didn't say that directly, though. He said that I looked like Snake Hair Lady. And I said to him, JJ, I do not look like Medusa.
So tell us what happened.
What happened in the last chapter was, I forget some of the details, but he went over to talk to the person, right?
Well, okay, so Malak was talking to Simonides and Esther, right? About
Oh, right.
Ben-Hur,
He was
whether or
giving them the report, and I was practicing juggling before I started the synopsis, so I have my juggling balls. But he basically told them there is no doubt this guy is definitely a Jew, and he explained what had happened and everything, and then he explained about the birth of Jesus, and then the guy was like, Simonides?
Simonides,
Yeah. He was like, oh my gosh, Rome is about to be overthrown.
Yep, and Simonides was rich, so he wanted to help contribute to the to the overthrow of Rome, right?
And it was, what was her name?
Esther?
Yeah, I thought so. Esther, she has some sort of crush on Ben-Hur.
Oh, okay.
And
then they went to the other scene where there were some men that were talking, and who walked into the room?
The Egyptian...
No, the Roman guy from the beginning of the story, Messala.
Yeah, Messala.
And did people expect him to win at the chariot race?
Yeah.
Okay. And who did they tell him about?
Ben-Hur?
Yeah, but they didn't know that it was Ben-Hur. They just said...
Oh,
he was asking where that guy came from.
And they didn't know.
And they didn't know, but they said, well, he was Arius' son. And before he was Arius' son, they told him the story of how he became Ares' son, right?
Oh, he's gonna guess.
So they said that he was a galley slave and all that, right?
He's gonna guess.
All right, so that's pretty much it. You gonna sample some of your juggling?
Nope, it's really bad.
Okay.
But I have a small pear on the side.
No juggling samples today, sorry. All right, so now we're on chapter 13 of Ben-Hur. A driver... Bleh, I will learn how to talk one day. A driver for Ilderim's Arabs. Arabs, probably referring to a breed of horse, that's my guess. Sheikh Ilderim was a man of too much importance to go about with a small establishment. He had a reputation to keep with his tribe, such as became a prince and patriarch of the greatest following in all the desert east of Syria. With the people of the cities he had another reputation, which was that of one of the richest personages, not a king, in all the east, and being rich, in fact, in money as well as in servants, camels, horses, and flocks of all kinds, he took pleasure in a certain state, which, besides magnifying his dignity with strangers, contributed to his personal pride and comfort. Wherefore the reader must not be misled by the frequent reference to his tent in the orchard of palms. He had there really a respectable dower. That is to say, he had there 3 large tents, one for himself, one for visitors, one for his favorite wife and her women, and 6 or 8 lesser ones occupied by his servants and such tribal retainers as he had chosen to bring with him as a bodyguard, strong men of approved courage and skillful with bow, spear, and horses. To be sure, his property of whatever kind was in no danger at the orchard, yet as the habits of a man go with him to town, not less than the country, and as it is never wise to slip the bands of discipline, the interior of the dower was devoted to his cows, camels, goats, and such property in general as might tempt a lion or a thief. To do him full justice, Ilderim kept well at all the customs of his people, abating none, not even the smallest. In consequence, his life at the orchard was a continuation of his life in the desert. Nor that alone, it was a fair reproduction of the old patriarchal modes, the genuine pastoral life of primitive Israel. Recurring to the morning, the caravan arrived at the orchard. "Here, planted here," he said, stopping his horse and thrusting a spear into the ground. "Door to the south, the lake before us thus, and these the children of the desert to sit under at the going down of the sun." At the last words he went to a group of 3 great palm trees and patted one of them as he would have patted his horse's neck or the cheek of the child of his love. Who but the sheik could of right say to the caravan, "Halt!" or of the tent, "Here, be it pitched"? The spear was wrested from the ground, and over the wound it had riven in the sod, the base of the first pillar of the tent was planted, marking the center of the front door. Then 8 others were planted, in all 3 rows of pillars, 3 in a row. Then, at call, the women and children came and unfolded the canvas from its packing on the camels. Who might do this but the women? Had they not sheared the hair from the brown goats of the flock, and twisted it into thread, and woven the thread into cloth, and stitched the cloth together, making the perfect roof, dark brown, in fact, though in the distance black as the tint of Kedar? And finally, with what jests and laughter and pulls all together, the united following of the sheik stretched the canvas from pillar to pillar, driving the stakes and fastening the cords as they went. And when the walls of open reed matting were put in place, the finishing touch to the building after the style of the desert, with what hush of anxiety they waited the good man's judgment, when he walked in and out, looking at the house in connection with the sun, the trees, and the lake, and said, rubbing his hands with might of heartiness, "Well done! Make the dower now, as ye well know. And tonight we will sweeten the bread with arrack, and the milk with honey, and at every fire there shall be a kid." That's probably a goat, not a child. "God with ye. Want of sweet water there shall not be, for the lake is our well. Neither shall the bearers of burden hunger, or the least of the flock, for here is green pasture also. God with you all. My children, go." And shouting, the many happy went their ways then to pitch their own habitations. A few remained to arrange the interior for the sheik, and of these the men servants hung a curtain to the central row of pillars, making 2 apartments, the one on the right sacred to Ilderim himself, the other sacred to his horses, his jewels of Solomon, which they led in, and with kisses and love, taps set at liberty. Against the middle pillar they then erected the arms rack, and filled it with javelins and spears, and bows and arrows and shields, outside of them hanging the master's sword, modelled after the new moon, and the glitter of its blade rivaled the glitter of the jewels bedded in its grip. Upon one end of the rack they hung the housings of the horses, gay, some of them, as the livery of a king's servant, while on the other end they displayed the great man's wearing apparel, his robes woolen and robes linen, his tunics and trousers, and many-colored kerchiefs for the head. Nor did they give over the work until he pronounced it well. Meantime the women drew out and set up the divan, more indispensable to him than the beard down flowing over his breast, white as Aaron's. They put a frame together in shape of 3 sides of a square, the opening to the door, and covered it with cushions and base curtains, and the cushions with a changeable spread striped brown and yellow. As the corners they placed pillows and bolsters sacked in cloth blue and crimson. Then around the divan they laid a margin of carpet, and the inner space they carpeted as well. And when the carpet was carried from the opening of the divan to the door of the tent, their work was done, whereupon they again waited until the master said it was good. Nothing remained then but to bring and fill the jars with water, and hang the skin bottles of arrack ready for the hand tomorrow the Laban. Nor might an Arab see why Ilderim should not be both happy and generous. In his tent by the lake of sweet waters, under the palms of the orchard of palms. Such was the tent at the door of which we left Ben-Hur. Servants were already waiting the master's direction. One of them took off his sandals, another unlatched Ben-Hur's Roman shoes. Then the 2 exchanged their dusty outer garments for fresh ones of white linen. "Enter, in God's name, enter, and take thy rest," said the host, heartily, in the dialect of the marketplace of Jerusalem. Forthwith he led the way to the divan. "I will sit here," he said next, pointing, "and there the stranger." A woman, in the old times she would have been called a handmaid, answered, and dexterously piled the pillows and bolsters as rests for the back, after which they sat upon the side of the divan, while water was brought fresh from the lake, and their feet bathed and dried with napkins. "We have a saying in the desert," Ilderim began, gathering his beard and combing it with his slender fingers, "that a good appetite is the promise of a long life. Hast thou such? By that rule, good sheik, I will live 100 years. I am a hungry wolf at thy door," Ben-Hur replied. "Well, thou shalt not be sent away like a wolf. I will give thee the best of the flocks." Ilderim clapped his hands. Seek the stranger in the guest tent, and say I, Ilderim, send him a prayer that his peace may be as incessant as the flowing of waters." The man in waiting bowed. "Say also," Ilderim continued, "that I have returned with another for breaking of bread, and if Balthazar the wise careth to share the loaf, 3 may partake of it, and the portion of the birds be none the less." The second servant went away. "Let us take our rest now." Thereupon Ilderim settled himself upon the divan, as if this day merchants sit on their rugs in the bazaars of Damascus, and when fairly at rest he stopped, combing his beard, and said gravely, "That thou art my guest, and hast drunk my Laban, and art about to taste my salt, ought not to forbid a question. Who art thou?" "Sheik Ilderim," said Ben-Hur, calmly enduring his gaze, "I pray thee not to think me trifling with thy just demand, but was there never a time in thy life when to answer such a question would have been a crime to thyself?" "By the splendor of Solomon, yes," Ilderim answered. "Betrayal of self is at times as base as the betrayal of a tribe." Thanks, good sheik," Ben-Hur exclaimed. "Never answer became thee better. Now I know thou dost but seek assurance to justify the trust I have come to ask, and that such assurance is of more interest to thee than the affairs of my poor life." The sheik in his turn bowed, and Ben-Hur hastened to pursue his advantage. "So it please thee then," he said. "First, I am not a Roman, as the name given thee as mine implieth." Ilderim clasped the beard overflowing his breast, and gazed at the speaker with eyes faintly twinkling through the shade of the heavy, close-drawn brows. "In the next place," Ben-Hur continued, "I am an Israelite of the tribe of Judah." The sheik raised his brows a little. Nor that merely, sheik. I am a Jew with a grievance against Rome, compared with that which thine is not more than a child's trouble." The old man combed his beard with nervous haste, and let fall his brows until even the twinkle of his eyes went out. "Still further, I swear to thee, Sheik Ilderim, I swear by the covenant of the Lord, made with my fathers, so thou but give me the revenge I seek, the money and the glory of the race shall be thine." Ilderim's brows relaxed. His head arose, his face began to beam, and it was almost possible to see the satisfaction taking possession of him. "Enough!" he said. "If at the roots of thy tongue there is a lie and coil, Solomon himself had not been safe against thee. That thou art not a Roman, that as Jew thou hast a grievance against Rome, and revenge to compass, I believe, and on that score enough. But as to thy skill, what experience hast thou in racing with chariots? And the horses, canst thou make them creatures of thy will, to know thee, to come at call, to go, if thou sayest it, to the last extreme of breath and strength, and then, in the perishing moment, out of the depths of thy life, thrill them to one exertion, the mightiest of all. The gift, my son, is not to everyone. Ah, by the splendor of God, I knew a king who governed millions of men, their perfect master, but could not win the respect of a horse. Mark, I speak not of the dull brutes whose round it is to slave for slaves, the debased in blood and image, the dead in spirit, but of such as mine here, the kings of their kind, of a lineage reaching back to the broods of the first Pharaoh, my comrades and friends, dwellers in tents, whom long association with me has brought up to my plain, who to their instincts have added our wits, and to their senses joined our souls, until they feel all we know of ambition, love, hatred, and contempt, in war heroes, in trust faithful as women. Ho there!" A servant came forward. Let my Arabs come. The man drew aside part of the division curtain of the tent, exposing to view a group of horses which lingered a moment where they were, as if to make certain of the invitation. Come, Ilderim said to them. Why stand ye there? What have I that is not yours? Come, I say. They stalked slowly in. Son of Israel, the master said, thy Moses was a mighty man, but I must laugh when I think of his allowing thy fathers the plodding ox and the dull, slow-natured donkey, and forbidding them property and horses. Thinkest thou he would have done so had he seen that one and that and this? At the word he laid his hand upon the face of the first to reach him, and patted it with infinite pride and tenderness. It is a misjudgment, Sheik, a misjudgment, Ben-Hur said warmly. Moses was a warrior as well as a lawgiver, beloved by God, and to follow war, what was it but to love all its creatures, these among the rest? A head of exquisite turn, with large eyes soft as a deer's and half hidden by the dense forelock, and small ears, sharp-pointed and sloped well forward, approached, then quite to his breast, the nostrils open and the upper lip in motion. Who are you? It asked, plainly as ever a man spoke. Ben-Hur recognized one of the 4 racers he had seen on the course, and gave his open hand to the beautiful brute. They will tell you, the blasphemers, may their days shorten as they grow fewer. The sheik spoke with the feeling of a man repelling a personal defamation. They will tell you, I say, that our horses of the best blood are derived from the Nisaean pastures of Persia. God gave the first Arab a measureless waste of sand, with some treeless mountains, and here and there a well of bitter waters, and said to him, Behold thy country. And when the poor man complained, the mighty one pitied him, and said again, Be of cheer, for I will twice bless thee above other men. The Arab heard and gave thanks, and with faith set out to find the blessings. He traveled all the boundaries first and failed. Then he made a path into the desert, and went on, and in the heart of the waste there was an island of green, very beautiful to see, and in the heart of the island, lo, a herd of camels, and another of horses. He took them joyfully and kept them with care for what they were, the best gifts of God. And from that green isle went forth all the horses of the earth, even to the pastures of Nisaea they went, and northward to the dreadful vales perpetually threshed by blasts from the sea of chill winds. Doubt not the story, or if thou dost, may never amulet have charm for an Arab again. Nay, I will give thee proof. He clapped his hands. Bring me the records of the tribe, he said to the servant, who responded. While waiting, the sheik played with the horses, patting their cheeks, combing their forelocks with his fingers, giving each one a token of remembrance. Presently 6 men appeared with chests of cedar, reinforced by bands of brass, and hinged and bolted with brass. Nay, said Ilderim, when they were all set down by the divan, I meant not all of them, only the records of the horses. That one. Open it, and take back the others. The chest was opened, disclosing a mass of ivory tablets strung on rings of silver wire, and as the tablets were scarcely thicker than wafers, each ring held several hundreds of them. I know, said Ilderim, taking some of the rings in his hand, I know with what care and zeal my son and these scribes of the temple in the holy city keep the names of the newly born, that every son of Israel may trace his line of ancestry to its beginning, though its antedate, the patriarchs, My fathers, may the recollection of them be green forever, did not think it sinful to borrow the idea and apply it to their dumb servants. See these tablets?" Ben-Hur took the rings and, separating the tablets, saw they bore rude hieroglyphics in Arabic, burned on the smooth surface by a sharp point of heated metal. "Canst thou read them, O son of Israel?" "No. Thou must tell me their meaning." "Know then, thou, each tablet records the name of a foal of the pure blood born to my fathers through the hundreds of years past, and also the names of sire and dame. Take them, and note their age, that thou mayst the more readily believe." Some of the tablets were nearly worn away. All were yellow with age. "In the chest there I can tell thee now I have the perfect history, perfect because certified as history seldom is, showing of what stock all these are sprung, this one and that one now supplicating thy notice and caress, and as they come to us here, their sires, even furthest removed in time, came to my sires under a tent roof like this of mine, to eat their measure of barley from the open hand, and be talked to as children, and as children kiss the thanks that they have not speech to express. And now, O son of Israel, thou mayest believe my declaration. If I am a lord of the desert, behold my ministers. Take them from me, and I become as a sick man left by the caravan to die. Thanks to them, age hath not diminished the terror of me on the highways between cities, and it will not while I have strength to go with them. Ha 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 ha! I could tell thee marvels done by their ancestors. In a favoring time I may do so, for the present, enough that they were never overtaken in retreat, nor by the sword of Solomon did they ever fail in pursuit. That, mark you, on the sands and under saddle, but now I do not know. I am afraid, for they are under yoke the first time, and the conditions of success are so many. They have the pride and the speed and the endurance. If I find them a master, they will win. Son of Israel, so thou art the man. I swear it shall be a happy day that brought thee thither. Of thyself now I speak. Or now you speak. "I know now," said Ben-Hur, "why it is that in the love of an Arab his horse is next to his children, and I know also why the Arab horses are the best in the world. But, good sheik, I would not have you judge me by words alone, for, as you know, all promises of men sometimes fail. Give me the trial first on some plain hereabout, and put the 4 in my hand tomorrow." Ilderim's face beamed again, and he would have spoken. "A moment, good sheik, a moment," said Ben-Hur. "Let me say further. From the masters in Rome I learned many lessons, little thinking that they would serve me in a time like this. I tell thee, these thy sons of the desert, though they have separately the speed of eagles and the endurance of lions, will fail if they are not trained to run together under the yoke. For, bethink thee, sheik, in every 4 there is one the slowest and one the swiftest, and while the race is always to the slowest, the trouble is always with the swiftest. It was so today. The driver could not reduce the best to harmonious action with the poorest. My trial may have no better result, but if so, I will tell thee of it, that I swear. Wherefore, in the same spirit, I say, can I get them to run together, moved by my will, the 4 as one? Thou shalt have the sestertii and the crown, and I my revenge. What sayest thou?" Ilderim listened, combing his beard the while. At the end he said with a laugh, "Ha ha ha! I think better of thee, son of Israel. We have a saying in the desert, if you will cook the meal with words, I will promise an ocean of butter. Thou shalt have the horses in the morning." At that moment there was a stir at the rear entrance to the tent. "The supper, it is here. And yonder my friend Balthazar, whom thou shalt know. He hath a story to tell, which an Israelite should never tire of hearing." And to the servant he added, "Take the records away, and return my jewels to their apartment." And they did as he was ordered. Chapter 14 is called "The Dower in the Orchard of Palms," and the first word is "if." And that is where we will end today, even though this one is only 3.5 pages long. It is already after 9:30, and we do try to stop at a reasonable time in the evening. If we can read 20 pages tomorrow, we can finish the book 4. That's not very likely. All right. You guys have a good night, and we will see you in the morning, or see you tomorrow. Good night. Is this one person you? Yeah. Okay.